Hi everyone, my name is Michaela. Today I'm going to be reviewing Purl Soho's Linen Quill yarn. I discovered this yarn a few years ago and I've been using it for a few projects ever since, and I'm really obsessed with it. I think it's a great yarn in so many aspects, so I'm really excited to share it with you today and help you along your yarn search. So I do have a skein with me here, so I'll be using this to talk about, as well as a few different projects that I've knit. So I'll be able to show you the yarn and then some examples of what it looks like finished. So I will start with just the basic characteristics of the yarn. It's a fingering weight yarn. They do actually have a worsted version. Today I'm really just going to be focusing on the properties of the fingering weight because I haven't used the worsted version, but I would love to try it. The yarn contents are 50% Highland wool, 35% alpaca, and 15% linen. And then 100 grams gets you 439 yards, so they really pack a lot of yards into this one skein. It is fingering weight, so that's typical of fingering weight yarn, but I'm really impressed by the amount of yardage on these skeins. The suggested needle size is 2 to 5 US, which is 3 to 3.75 millimeters, and then that's going to get you to 26 to 30 stitches per 4 inches. On their website, they have 55 different colors available, which is amazing to me because that's so many options. Purl Soho does a really good job of making lots of color options, which is one reason why I love their yarns. But with this yarn specifically, the colors are so beautiful, and that's a lot of options for you. There's also a lot of ombres in their color palette, so if you wanted to do a gradient piece, this is a fantastic choice. This yarn retails on Purl Soho's website for $17.50. So when you do the breakdown, 439 yards for $17.50 is a pretty good deal. So then the hand feel and the kind of physical properties of the yarn. It is a little bit rough as you're knitting it, I noticed, but once you block it, it really blooms into this beautiful soft fabric. Another thing I want to note is that the dye and the colorways are so beautiful. It almost creates this kind of like heathered look. I don't know if you can see how it's more heathered. I don't know if that's the way the dye is being picked up on the different fibers or if that's just the like dye recipe that they use, but it's really pretty. It almost looks like a heather appearance. This is the colorway Peach Stone. I'm not sure what this colorway is. I bought it a few years ago, but I'm obsessed with it, and sadly this is all I have left of that skein. So talking about some of the pros of this yarn, the biggest one to me is going to be the value. So the price again is $17.50 for a skein, which is 439 yards. So Purl Soho's yarns tend to be a little bit more expensive, but when I found this one, I really fell in love with it, partly because of the price, and I really just think that you're getting a lot out of it, and they last forever. It's like you can never get rid of one skein. So I did a little bit of a breakdown of how much it would cost to knit a sweater based on one of the patterns that Purl Soho was advertising this yarn with on their website. The smallest size was a 28 to 31 inch bust, which used 3 skeins, and then the largest size was for a 61 to 64 inch bust, which used 7 skeins. And if you have a lot of experience knitting sweaters, you may have already noticed that 3 to 7 skeins is really not that much compared to lots of other yarns you can buy out there, and how much is going to be on those skeins. So then going into the price of it, it's going to cost anywhere from $52.50 to $122.50 for a total sweater. For a really good quality luxury yarn that does contain alpaca contents and linen contents, I see this as a really great value for the cost of an entire sweater. I guess if you're not familiar with how much it usually costs to knit a sweater, I'll give a little briefing on my own circumstances for how I view sweaters. So I realize I'm coming from a place of privilege when I talk about how much I'm able to spend on sweaters. I want to note that I'm only doing this several or less times a year. and I typically don't knit a lot of sweaters because they take me a long time to knit, and I stick with smaller garments. But when I do decide to knit a sweater, I like to go for higher end yarns because I want that garment to last a long time if I'm putting all of the work into making it myself. So when I plan to buy enough yarn to knit a sweater, I typically budget about $100 to $200. I'm a size 32-inch bust, so I'm knitting either the first or second size typically of a sweater pattern. Again, I'm not doing this all the time. It takes me several months to knit a sweater, and I'm not always working on one. And in between, I like to do little accessory projects or pick from my stash instead. But for me, when it comes down to this yarn, to be able to knit a sweater for $52.50 to $122.50, that's a fantastic deal for how great this yarn is. So I really think this is a fantastic find if you're looking for a more luxury but affordable yarn. I think it's really important that we recognize different yarns that give different price points along the spectrum of, really cheap synthetic yarn to a luxury natural fiber yarn. I want knitting to be as accessible as we can make it, and the world's only going to be better with more knitters in it. I think there's a lot of barriers when it comes to researching yarn that make it hard to find really good quality yarns for a good price, and that's partly why I want to make these videos, because I want to help other knitters find more accessibility with their yarn and be able to find good yarns that are within their budget. So if we can help support other knitters by finding good quality yarn for affordable prices, then that's going to be just a win-win for everybody. Another pro that I have about the yarn is the color range is so vast, and I'm really impressed with their offering there, and there's so many options for ombre, so you can do gradients, and color work would be really beautiful with this yarn. So I think that's another great pro, is you have as many options as you would need for colors. For the cons, the only thing that really sticks out to me is that it can feel a little bit scratchy. So for me, this doesn't really bother me, but if you're more sensitive to itchy wools or linens, that might be something to consider to make an accessory or a garment, or even like a home accessory that doesn't have to touch your skin or have close contact with your skin, be a little bit more loose. So, again, it doesn't really bother me, but that's something to keep in mind if that would bother you. So into the uses. So I think my favorite use for this yarn is accessories. Partly that's because it's fingering weights. So I do knit sweaters in fingering weight yarn, but I am a little bit slower at knitting with it, so I don't knit them often. I tend to go towards accessories when I knit with fingering weight, just because using size 3 or 4 needles and knitting a whole sweater in that takes me a long time, and I tend to want to move on to other things. But if you love knitting fingering weight sweaters, this would also be a great option. For me, I think I am more likely to knit accessories with this, as one skein can go a long way, so it's relatively affordable to knit accessories with it, and it creates a lighter weight fabric with some warmth because of the wool and alpaca contents, but then the linen contents keep it breathable, so that's a really good option for lightweight accessories if you live somewhere where there's warmer winters, or if it's like a transitional season. I also think this is going to be a great yarn for home accessories. So they advertise it on the website with blankets. I think that's a really great project for this yarn because of all the color options, and they have a few like ombre blankets, so that's really pretty. I haven't knit any home accessories with this yet, but I would love to give that a shot for one of my next projects. So for the sustainability of this yarn, I did have a little bit of trouble on the Purl Soho's website finding good information about the sustainability piece. They do kind of have a blanket statement about sustainability and their efforts to source their materials from good vendors, but there's not really specific information. I couldn't find where this yarn is manufactured or dyed or spun. and I couldn't find any information about where the fibers are grown. So I would definitely like more transparency on Purl Soho's part about where the actual yarn is coming from, since it was hard to easily find that information on their website. So I do want to point out that there's no one answer to sustainability. So just the fact that you're making your own piece is a huge step towards a more sustainable lifestyle. Another thing I wanted to point out is the contents of linen. So linen has similar properties to cotton. So linen can be pretty interchangeable with cotton, but it actually typically uses less water to grow. So in my eyes, I see that as a more sustainable option. Part of sustainability definitely plays into your own opinions and your own factors of what you need. That's not me telling you to always use linen compared to cotton, but if I'm going to knit something with a natural plant fiber, I'm going to lean more towards a linen than a cotton. Again, those are just my preferences. You have to find out what's going to be the best sustainable option for yourself based on your own research and the preferences for your own lifestyle. So going into the patterns that I've knit with this yarn, I have a couple things to show you, so I'm really excited about this first one. It's a newly released pattern of mine, and it's called Joshua Tree. So it's a really lightweight beanie. It's going to be perfect for like fall or spring, or if you live somewhere where the winters are a little bit warmer. So I'll show you some of these textures. I have a bubble stitch and then drop stitch braids that go all the way around and then meet up at the top, and then this double rolled brim. So again, it's really lightweight. It's a nice transitional season beanie, and I think it's perfect, and it was super fun and quick to knit. So I'll link it down below. It's available in my Ravelry shop, and you can find the pattern to purchase there. The other thing I wanted to show you was this top. So I'm actually not going to release this as a pattern. I really kind of made it just for myself, for my own wardrobe. If there's enough people that want me to make it into a pattern, maybe I'll rethink it and make some modifications along the way, but I really have kind of moved on to other things since I've knit it and don't have any plans right now to release this one. But I'll show you guys. So it's just a nice easy layering vest. So it's knit the front and the back separately, flat, just a stockinette stitch with some short row shaping to curve the hems, and then decreasing here I did a 2x2 rib for the neckline and then a I-cord bind off. And then the back panels have the ties. So once I got up to the tie portion, I cast on with a provisional cast on along this whole length, knit it in stockinette stitch, and then used Kitchener stitch to combine the two to make a really thick I-cord, and then continued up, and then shoulder seams to connect the two. Yeah, so it's a great layering piece. It doesn't have to touch my skin, so it's a good option to knit a garment like this as a nice layering piece for people who might be more sensitive to the itchiness of the yarn. So in conclusion, I think this is a really affordable and good quality yarn for accessories, garments, and home goods. I hope that you check it out. If you've used this before, please let me know down below and link your projects, and I'll go give them some love on Ravelry or Instagram. And you can find me on Instagram down below, and you can find my hat pattern down below as well that links to my Ravelry shop. So happy knitting, and I'll see you again soon.